Well, thank you for having me here again. I think I was here about a year ago or so. Yeah. So thanks for having me back. And yeah, let me just tell you a little bit about my background, because I've been through pretty much what you have. My very early background is that I was born and raised in Sweden. That's why I have a little accent, but grew up in Sweden, and since I was about 4, I knew I wanted to be a doctor, and of course the only doctor I knew about was a medical doctor, so that's what I wanted to be. And when I was, I think I was 17, my mother ended up having some really severe health problems, and went to the Karolinska Hospital in Stockholm, which is a very well-known, kind of like the Mayo Clinic in Europe. They couldn't help her, and she came home, and then somebody said, well, why don't you go see a chiropractor? And we said, what's that? We had never even heard the word, because there weren't that many chiropractors in Sweden. So anyway, long story short, my mother went to the chiropractor a couple of times, and she felt a lot better. A few more treatments, she was just fine. And I thought that was just fascinating when the famous doctors at the Karolinska Institute couldn't do anything for her, and this chiropractor helped her so much. So anyway, I decided that that's what I wanted to do. Problem was that in Sweden there was not any education to be a chiropractor at that time. There still isn't, actually. Well, there sort of is, but not really. I found out that the only education in Europe at the time was in England, and then I found out that the school in England wasn't quite as good, and it wasn't really recognized and certified as like the schools over here. So that's how I ended up coming over here. So I did my pre-med in Sweden first, and came over to what was Northwestern Health Sciences, or Northwestern College of Chiropractic. Now it's called Northwestern Health Sciences University in Bloomington. And at the time I went, it was in St. Paul. But anyway, great school. Went through the 4 years of chiropractic education. In the meantime, I met my first husband, who was a student too. So we ended up getting married right around our graduation time, and then moved to Sweden and took over an existing practice there. And practiced there for 6 years. Both my kids were born while we were there, and then we moved back here. So we ended up starting the practice in Wayzata 30 years ago. And all seemed to be fine, or on the surface, it was fine. You can all relate to that, right? And anyway, things were bad in some areas, but we kept this facade of the happy family and all that. Anyway, then I was in Sweden in 1999. Over the summer, I was there with my kids, seeing my parents, and got a phone call from my husband, who said, by the way, when you come home, I'm not there, I moved out. So that was a little traumatic to to come back to, and obviously all my family were in Sweden, and didn't really have much of a support group here. But that leads in a little bit to what I'm going to talk about health, because at that time I really had to figure out how to be strong and hold up, because my ex-husband had decided that he didn't want to be married anymore, and he also didn't want to practice chiropractic anymore. So as a mother of 2, I didn't want my kids, how you base your decisions around your kids when you have kids. So I didn't want my kids to have to move from the house we lived in. So I figured if we were going to be able to maintain this house, I needed to make decent money, because I knew he wasn't going to contribute anything. So he left me with a ton of debt. I mean, the clinic was about this far from bankruptcy. It was a mess. So anyway, keeping the house, I needed to, instead of, I could have bankrupted the clinic and gone and worked somewhere, but I wouldn't have made enough money to be able to keep my house then. So I thought, well, how can I do this? How can I get this clinic successful enough that I can keep my kids from having to be more disturbed by this than they were, which, I mean, they handled it pretty darn good, actually. But yeah, so I took over the clinic, and I had worked kind of part-time before because I was a mom and all that stuff, and so there were a lot of things that he had done, and the reason why we were getting so close to bankruptcy, which I had no idea. I didn't know that we hadn't had health insurance for 2 years. I didn't know that our property taxes had been paid for I don't know how long, and I mean it was just a mess because he kept all the finances from me. He was handling that. If I handled the kids, he was handling the finances. So I really didn't know anything about that part. So I had to do a quick study, and good thing was that I knew I was a really good chiropractor, and I knew I could take good care of people, so I knew that. So now I just had to take care of me, right? So I could take care of people, so I could handle my family. So at that time, like I said, I didn't have any family around. I had a couple of really good friends, but really did not have a support, because a lot of my support that I had was his family, his sisters and his mother, and all of a sudden they were on the other side of the fence there. So and I had a couple of friends that said that you really need to take care of yourself if you're going to survive this, because you talked about quicksand and you talked about drowning. I used to describe myself as a blob on the floor that somebody could scrape up with a spatula. That was what I felt like. But anyway, a couple of my friends brought me out for dinner and said, this is what you need to do. You need to exercise. You need to go buy yourself a health club membership and exercise. I said, well, I can't afford that. And you said, you can't afford not to afford that. So they made me go buy a health club membership at Lifetime up in Plymouth, which I still have, by the way. And so that's the first thing I want to say, that if you're not exercising, please do, because you have to. The only way that you can burn stress hormones, because going through a divorce is hugely stressful, the only way you can burn stress hormones in your body is by exercising. So exercise is so important, and it can be as simple as going for a good walk. And another thing, when you exercise, or if you go for a walk, you go outside, look at things far away, because if you look at things far away, it kind of draws you out of your body. You know how you tend to be so internal, you just want to crawl under the covers and hide. But if you look at things far away, it just opens you up, and it's just really important for your mind. But physical exercise is just hugely important when you go through something really stressful. The other thing that's really important too is to make sure that you get good nutrition, of course. If you're used to cooking for a family, and maybe then your kids are off to college or something, and all of a sudden it's just you, and it's like really boring to just cook for yourself. So you tend to just not really eat meals and eat healthy, or you eat mac and cheese on the couch, like you said. Just focus on eating healthy living foods, vegetables, fruits, healthy stuff, and you also want to make sure that you take care of your body, so you don't put on a bunch of weight, because it's super easy when you go through stress to just because you get a little bit of satisfaction from carbs when you eat. It just gives you a little momentarily that feeling of being happy, but not really when you step on the scale later, because you wanna make sure that you don't go put on a bunch of weight and kind of have a self-destructive thing going where you end up getting sick from you talked about a heart attack and diabetes, and that those things happen when you're not happy, and you do end up not taking care of the body, because we just have this one body that we have to live in for a long time, and of course sleep is another big one, and when you're stressed, you tend to have all these thoughts going around in circles in your head, and just learning some simple meditation or relaxation, and there are also some supplements that can be really calming, just natural supplements like valerian and so on. It just to help you relax at night so you can get sleep, because if we don't sleep, it really starts to undermine your health. Sleep is just so important, and if you're awake at night, the thoughts that you think are not good usually, because everything that's bad tends to become 100 times worse when we're in the middle of the night. So getting good sleep is really important. And of course, another thing, a simple thing is drinking water too. You got your water bottle with you there, which is good, because it's really interesting if we're dehydrated, it's unbelievable how that affects our bodies, both physically. Like if you're even 2% dehydrated, your organs are starting not to function as well as the other ways do. And there's a definite connection with dehydration and depression. So if you're already feeling kind of depressed and you're dehydrated, you're going to feel worse. So drinking enough water is a really simple thing to do, both for your body and your mind. So those are all important things to do. And I think it's really important to take some nutritional supplements, because when you're going through a divorce, which is one of the most stressful things you can do, you burn B vitamins, for example, like crazy. Your B vitamins are just like burned up, and you really need to supplement extra Bs. And I always, my patients that are going through divorces, I always also put them on adrenal supplements, because your adrenal glands are working overtime and they get burned out. And then you just don't handle stress well. So there are some supplements that can really help to strengthen up your body to hold up better to stress. And of course, there's lots of other supplements and things that you can do too. And then we get to what I do, chiropractic, and we do acupuncture too. And both those things can be really helpful, because how many of you are chiropractic patients who have been to a chiropractor? Yeah. So the chiropractic is built on the principle that it's the nervous system that controls everything in your body. You have your brain, which is the big computer here, and then you have your spinal cord, which is really an extension of the brain. So the brain and the spinal cord is called the central nervous system, and then we have all these nerves that exit between the vertebra through the whole spine that go to all the different parts of the body and control everything. And there's actually a little nerve ending to every single little cell in your body, which is pretty amazing when you stop and think about it. But there's a constant communication between your brain and every cell in your body. And if this communication system, which is really what the nervous system is, really a communication system with information flowing to and from your brain constantly, if that all works the way it should, then the brain every fraction of a second knows exactly what's happening in every cell in your body, which is mind-boggling when you stop and think about it. But this communication can be disturbed if we have anything out of alignment in the spine. So if you have a couple of vertebrae with nerves coming out in between, and you have an injury, or you have something happen to you, and there can be many micro traumas along the way, and you have something out of alignment that's pushing on the nerve that's coming out. So this nerve that's sending messages to and from your brain is being squished or pushed upon, then maybe just 60% of the messages get through. So if you, for example, go and eat something and you need to digest protein in your stomach, and your brain needs to send down impulses to get your stomach to produce more acids and pepsins so you can break down the protein. If only part of those impulses are getting through, that's going to be kind of wimpy digestion, and you're going to end up with heartburn, and you're going to end up with not digesting and breaking down your foods, and you're not going to be as healthy in the long run, because you may not be able to break down and absorb the nutrients you take in. So for me as a chiropractor, I think it's super important to make sure that you don't have anything interfering with the communication between your brain and your body, because then you're going to be able to function optimally. And then of course, in acupuncture, that has to do with energy flow. So but chiropractic has to do with nerve flow. Acupuncture has to do with energy flow, and acupuncture is sort of mysterious to us because we can't really see and touch it and so on, but we can actually measure it nowadays. So we do something called electromeridian imaging, where we actually read out certain specific acupuncture points and read the amount of energy that you have, and we can see if you have too much or too little in certain meridians, and we can balance that out, and it's really pretty cool. But and that's something that we don't, use always. But if we have complicated cases or things that are more emotionally involved, then acupuncture can be really helpful to kind of balance out energy. So yeah, that's what we do. And of course, people tend to think about chiropractic as back pain or neck pain, but it really is so much more. It has to do with just taking care of your health naturally, because we don't use pharmaceuticals. We use chiropractic to allow the body to have flow, free nerve flow, so it can heal itself, because we really are a self-healing mechanism. Like if you have a cut, for example, that's going to heal up by itself. The body just does that on its own, and it does all these things. It tries to self-correct. If the nervous system is working the way it's supposed to, then it's supposed to and is able to take care of and heal things. So we want to make sure that nervous system works just right. And of course, if you have a bunch of irritation along your spine on your nervous system, you're going to be more stressed out simply because of that. Like we see that a lot of times with kids that are hyperactive or can't focus or whatever. We adjust their necks and they relax, and then they can focus on their schoolwork. And it's the same with adults too. That if we have a bunch of stress along the spine, and then we go through a super stressful situation in life with a divorce and having to deal with a lot of things we haven't dealt with before, and then we can't quite handle it as well as we can if everything is balanced in our bodies on that level too. So, and of course, relaxation and yoga and meditation, those things are important too, and those are things you can do on your own. But yeah, so does anybody have any questions? I just kind of in a nutshell, that's what we do.
I've never had acupuncture. Mm-hmm. So would you mind telling me, I thought I read something, is that in conjunction with chiropractic, or can you have it without having a chiropractic correction?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most of the time we combine it with chiropractic, because the acupuncture meridians and the nerve flow in your body really kind of work hand in hand. In fact, when we do the electromeridian imaging readout, it also gives us an indication where there's probably things out of alignment in your spine. So it's very closely related. So if we use acupuncture, we basically use chiropractic on all of our patients as our main thing, and then we add acupuncture when needed. But there are definitely acupuncturists that only do acupuncture. I mean, that's part of Chinese medicine and so on. But they also in China, if you go a little where it comes from, or actually acupuncture originally came from India, but then it works its way into China and so on, and it has been around for we know around 7,000 years, but maybe longer. So it obviously works, or it wouldn't have been around that long. But people that practice just acupuncture, especially if they do the whole Oriental medicine thing, they use something called Tui Na too, which is a sort of a Chinese kind of between chiropractic and massage therapy, and so that's been kind of along the whole time. So it's always kind of worked together, and also with herbal medicine and so on. So Chinese medicine is much bigger really than just acupuncture, even though we've kind of pulled that part out in the United States. But it was actually chiropractors that brought acupuncture to the United States in the 1970s. Meridians affect so many different things in our bodies, and the whole philosophy of Chinese medicine is so different than Western way of thinking. Like, we think about bacteria and viruses causing illnesses, whereas they look at, for example, too much heat or too much cold or too much dampness, too much wind, that those they look at that as pathogens and things that can cause illness in your body. Too much stress, of course.
Can you talk a little bit about what you do for testing for allergies? Like food allergies and things like that.
Yeah.
Also, as I'm suffering from.
Yeah, from your allergies. Yeah, we use what's called applied kinesiology, so we do very specific muscle testing for allergies, which it's kind of cool because it's actually very simple. I mean, it's so simple that it just sometimes is hard for people to believe that it can sometimes actually be more accurate than blood work and so on. So yeah, we often.
So what is the muscle testing like? I mean.
Well, it's really simple. You just take whatever you think that the person may be allergic to, and you can either hold it, close to their body, because we all have an energy field around our body, so it has to do with quantum physics, really, and energy vibrations. Or you can have some in your mouth, which is easier to explain to people, because once you put something in your mouth, then you taste it, then the impulse has gone to the brain, so the brain now recognizes what it is. And if it's something that doesn't agree with your system, you're going to temporarily go weak when you test the muscle. So, and it's kind of fun sometimes when I have interns at the clinics or new doctors. I had Dr. Bethany. I brought her in not too long ago. So I had this really huge guy who was like this football player guy, and we were testing him and. I think it was on dairy. I tested him, and I mean, we just used an arm test, and he couldn't even hold his arm up. It was just the funniest thing. I could bring his arm down with my little finger. Yeah, he was just super allergic to dairy, and we got him off dairy, and I mean, a whole bunch of his health issues cleared up. Yeah, so. We do allergy testing, we always start with dairy and wheat, because those are like 90% of all food allergies are dairy and wheat. Yeah, it's big. So
is it all dairy, or just dairy in general, or certain dairy products?
No, if you're allergic to dairy, and people think lactose intolerance, and some people, which is the sugar in milk, that some people are intolerant to that, but it's actually much more common to be allergic to the proteins in milk. So if you are, then it doesn't matter if it's yogurt or ice cream or whatever it is. Yeah, so and it's astounding, because those things that people tend to eat every day, our bodies are so used to getting them every day, so we just think this is normal to feel this way, and then we get people off those common foods that you eat every day. They go after a month, because it takes a while for it to clear. Like after a month, they go, "Oh my God!" It's like they just feel so much better. Yeah. And allergies, this is just a little tidbit, since we're dealing with a group that go through tough times, but corn. Do you know what the most common allergy reaction is to corn? Guess anyone?
In your mouth.
No? Any other guesses? Huh?
Being near a bathroom.
Yeah, for you, yeah. No, but the most common reaction to corn is depression.
Is what?
Yeah.
Is what?
Depression.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, which is, to me, fascinating. If I ever had enough time to do a study on this, I would love to do that, because with corn being inside, like this corn syrup is in so much, and so much depression in this country, and other countries where, like Sweden, they don't use corn syrup for sweetener; they use sugar beets, yeah. I mean, it would just be really interesting to see if there's a correlation there.
Is there not as much depression in Sweden?
They do have more of the winter, because it's so dark in the winter, but in the summers, nobody's depressed in Sweden in the summer. Yeah, and corn is also not a big part of the diet there. It's not part of the culture. So, I mean, obviously, things have spread around. Corn chips are in the whole world now. It's not, when I grew up, I had never had corn till I came to this country. Yeah. So any other questions?
So if we came like for insomnia and stress related, if we went through the initial testing, then like how frequently would we come for follow-up? Every week or every 2 weeks?
It's really, yeah, it depends. It totally, so we do, an initial intake, we spend an hour the first time, and everybody's so different, so depending on what we do a really thorough history and then an exam, and a a lot of times if there are spinal issues, we take x-rays and we do just a really thorough evaluation. And then depending on what the person needs, it's all very individualized. And some people, like if somebody's been in a car accident, for example, which, we just had this weather, And by the way, if anybody's in a car accident, you're 100% covered for any chiropractic care under your car insurance, which most people don't realize. But so if you're in a car accident, for example, since I've just been thinking about that with the snow and tons of accidents here, yes. Then we often, treat people. If it's a severe injury, maybe even daily for a couple of weeks, and then 3 times a week, and then twice a week, and then once a week, and just kind of extend it out. And we have a lot of people that come in once a month for wellness treatment. Yeah, so that's kind of our goal, to get to that. But yeah, depending on where people are at, and some people just need a little bit of care, some people need more.
So kind of along the same lines, if a person came in for chronic pain, would insurance typically pay for that, or part of it, or not?
Yeah, insurance covers chiropractic care, so it just depends on, in today's crazy insurance environment, what you have for insurance. But we always check on insurance and make the best of what there is. If people don't have health insurance, which is unusual in today's world, or if they are in a network where we're not providers, we have a really reduced cash rate too for patients. But hopefully the insurance world will get better. It's just insane. I mean, we check on people's deductibles. I had somebody the other day, they had an in-network deductible of $7,000, and they had an out-of-network of $21,000. I mean, it's just crazy. So even though, no, I mean, more people are covered now, but they can't use it. I had a young guy came on, the first year with the Obamacare, came in, he was so excited he could finally go to the chiropractor. He said, because I have insurance now, and then we checked on it, and he had a $10,000 deductible, because of course young people, they go on the exchange and buy the cheapest insurance. Of course they got a deal, and then not realizing, because he didn't even know what the word deductible meant. He's like 22. Yeah, so it's sad, but we always try to work out that financial part to make it doable. Yeah, we're there to help people. We're not there to work for profit.
Medicare?
We take Medicare, yeah. Medicare covers chiropractic care. Yeah. Yeah, we've been Medicare providers forever.
Do you have any tips for the insomnia and the anxiety? Is that what you were asking? I actually started getting acupuncture, but I'm open to, when I was in law school, I took Unisom, and I know that's not
That's not the answer.
that's not healthy, but I'm just open to new ideas. Well, how did the acupuncture work for you? I fall asleep during the appointment.
Oh, but then do you fall asleep at nighttime?
Pretty well, unless I'm really over caffeinated, or. But during the time that I started it, and I knew there were some other things going on too, it did help. It kind of took the edge off. It was like a calming. So I'll respond, and I mean, I have physicians in my family, but I'll run the gamut of different ways of healing.
Yeah.
So my card, they didn't get cards because they came in later. My card says truth, so here's the truth side of it. We know a lot of these things we should be doing. We know we should be eating better and sleeping better and exercising more. How do you face that truth and make yourself do it? When you're going through divorce and stress and trying to figure out your life, it seems like you've only got so much energy. And
Right.
so to commit to the discipline of saying, I'm going to exercise regularly, or I'm going to get to bed every night, is really hard.
Mhm.
It seems like one more thing, one more pressure you're putting on
Right.
yourself.
So having practiced for 36, going on 37 years, since I did 6 years in Sweden before I ended up in Wayzata, I learned a lot from my patients too. And I think the reason they call it the practice of medicine or the practice of chiropractic is that the more you practice, the better you get. But one thing that I've learned that, and this is obviously just a generalization, but it's a very true distinction between men and women in general, is that men put things on their calendar and call it important. Like if they're going to exercise, they have it on their calendar, and then it becomes an appointment with yourself, and then it's important because if you write it down, then it tends to happen. Whereas women, we're wired to take care of everybody else. We're wired to take care of the family and the kids, and if there's ever a little teeny bit of time left, then we spend it on ourselves. So just put it on the calendar. I always tell people to just don't make this huge goal of exercises in 2 hours a day. Just make a goal of a half hour 3 times a week or something. Or 20 minutes twice a week. And then once you get started, then you start feeling better. Then it's easier to build on that. Sometimes if we make these big goals, then we create failures for ourselves, right? So. And it's like, one day at a time too. Just, don't beat yourself up if you goofed up one day. It's always tomorrow. Yeah.
I hear a lot of people say that,
Mm-hmm.
not just me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to quote Louise Griffith's title of "You Are Worth It," and just realize you are worth it. And it's almost, I would say it's like parenting yourself. You would have your child have recess and have fresh air and pack a healthy snack and just go in and take care of yourself as a child. And I do have to schedule appointments, like you said.
Yeah.
It's double booked 2 ahead, and it's like, no, that's an appointment for me.
Mm-hmm.
And to keep that appointment, and not, if it's canceled for some emergency, snowstorm, whatever, then immediately rebook it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just have to realize that you're important, and you have
I
to.
keep thinking integrity. You're living according to your own values when you do it, and when you're not doing it, you're not really in integrity.
Right.
Because you're worth it.
Dr. I have to interrupt this because I'm thinking about this and listening to you talk and realizing that you went through what you did and you literally came out the other side and started a positive path for your life. But I think it would be, when you're talking about goals now, that I think they would love to hear your story about how you set goals and how it led you to Jay.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was positive thinking and positive goal setting.
Right. Yeah, and this was, my husband, in August 8th, 1999 is when he called me in Sweden and said, I won't be there when you come home. And I was, that's when I felt like the blob on the floor that somebody could have scraped up with a spatula for quite a while, actually. But then when I got closer, so this is August, so when I got closer to Christmas, I wanted my kids to have a normal Christmas, so we had a very normal Christmas. Everything was fine, except my ex-husband wasn't there, but we had lots of fun anyway, so we had a good Christmas. And then we got to New Year's, and for years, every year on New Year's Day morning, I've always sat down and written my goals for the year, or written down, what I want to do and how I want the next year. So I wrote all these goals that I had to get the mortgage under control, and I had to, it was just all these goals, figuring out how to feed my kids. I was like, yeah, things were pretty bad then. But the last thing I thought, I don't want to be alone for the whole rest of my life. So once I get through this divorce, which was going to, I figured it would be finalized sometime during the summer, then I thought, well, really would like to meet somebody new because I don't want to be living by myself for the whole rest of my life. And I didn't really think that was going to happen that year, but down the line. So I wrote down, if I was going to meet somebody new, I wrote down exactly what I wanted, because I thought if I was going to write it down, I might as well write exactly what I wanted. So he had to be tall, dark, and handsome, and he had to be a professional and chiropractor or something else professional. I can't remember, attorney or whatever I wrote. I can't remember exactly, but I mean, it was very specific, and he had to downhill ski. Yeah, and I thought, was this American husband didn't work out? Maybe Swedish would, because I put Swedish with a Christmas or with a question mark at the end. So that was all the other things, and there were, I mean, it was very detailed what I would like my perfect husband in the future to be. So anyway. So this was New Year's Day, and then on February 4th, I went to homecoming at the chiropractic college and met my next husband, who